Hi everyone again. I'm happy to step back to this beautiful stage and to proceed with our event further. And we just heard the stories of super brands of Moldova, Moldovan companies that managed to cross the borders and become larger, not only in terms of geography, but also in terms of being preferred choice of the customers, to win actually the customers' hearts. And now we are here to introduce our next guest speaker. In this ever-evolving world, marked by instability and unforeseen future, there are personalities, visionaries, that plays the role to offer their foreseen visions, their far-sighted visions for the future. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm really proud to introduce one of the most recognized scientists in the world today. He is the best-selling author, a TV presenter of many shows, but also a professor of theoretical physics at the City University of New York. He has two goals. The first one is to complete Einstein's dream of a theory of everything, to unify all the laws of physics into a single one. And the second dream is to predict trends in business, finance, and the economy, which will revolutionize our way of life. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Professor MICHIO KAKU. Good morning, Professor. You woke up early morning today to get connected with us from New York. Thank you so much. How do you hear us?
Yes, no, it's a great pleasure to be here, a great honor to be a guest of the Moldova Business Week. And I'm here in New York City to try to give you an indication of the future. What will the next 10, 20, 50 years look like into the future? I've had the privilege of interviewing over 300 of the world's top scientists for BBC television, the Discovery Channel, the Science Channel, to give you the most authentic look at what the future holds for us.
It's amazing, and thank you so much for doing that. And we are here exactly in the middle of our event, and we are eager to know what are the trends that we should perhaps witness in the upcoming years.
That's right. Realize that science and technology are the engine for prosperity. Where does prosperity, where does wealth come from? Wealth does not come from the sky. Wealth comes from science and technology that has to be harnessed by governments, by entrepreneurs, by visionaries. That's where wealth comes from. And that's what I want to talk about and share with you today.
Yeah, please, the floor is yours. You can start your presentation.
Very good. So I'm here in New York City as a guest of the Moldova Business Week, and I'd like to share with you some thoughts on Zoom. So first I'd like to go to share screen and begin the process of talking about the future of science and technology. First of all, in my books, I've talked about the future of artificial intelligence, biotechnology, BrainNet, when the human mind connects directly to the internet. We simply think and our wishes come true. And then in the future of humanity, I even go farther into the future of space travel, when we go back to the moon and Mars. But today, let's talk about Moldova. You know, when I was invited to give a talk at this conference, I jumped at the opportunity. Because when I think of Moldova, I think of a huge booster rocket. A rocket on the launch pad that's ready to blast off, but it's not quite ready yet. But all the ingredients are there. First of all, it's a relatively young nation, bursting with ideas and enthusiasm, and it has all the ingredients to become an economic and social success. So what does Moldova have? First of all, of course, It has a world famous winery industry, famous around the world. Soil, a fertile soil that's the envy of many nations. A climate that's relatively mild, relative peace and tranquility, the ideal conditions to start a new company. And Moldova is almost ready to blast off. And why is that? Because the population is largely educated, young people eager to work, a population largely at peace, and a nation eager for invention, eager for innovation, eager to work and to be part of the new economy. But what's the problem? Well, it's not a problem. What Moldova needs is a match, a spark, a spark that we can see all around us that'll set off this rocket. So what are the ingredients of this spark? First of all, reducing taxes and regulations on companies. Young companies are the engine of the economy. We have to reduce taxes, encourage entrepreneurs, give them loans, give them breaks, and reduce unnecessary regulations. Now, regulations, of course, are important, but we don't need so many of these regulations, and we have to encourage science and technology. And most important, we have to encourage the young through universities, research centers. We have to create role models for young people so they want to learn about science and technology, and from that, create new companies for the future. So that's what we need for Moldova. But you know, throughout history, science did not exist. People lived in misery and poverty. But what happened? First of all, if you look at the science, you realize that throughout human history, people lived for about the age of 30. That's right. People were born, they had children, and then they died. People didn't live very long throughout human history. Life was short and brutal. But then about 200 years ago, something happened. Something magical happened. And that is science and technology gets off the ground. First, we physicists invented what is called thermodynamics. That is, the laws of heat engines. From that, we created the locomotive, the steam engine, factories, and the Industrial Revolution. For the first time in human history, machines could replace human labor. And then, 80 years after that, we physicists invented electricity and magnetism and harnessed the power to light up our cities. The electric age was the second great era of innovation. And then third, we physicists invented the quantum theory, which makes possible the transistor, makes possible the laser, the internet, GPS, telecommunications. And now here's the question for today. The question for today is, if the first wave was steam power, the second wave of innovation and wealth was electricity and magnetism, the third wave is high tech and computers, what is the fourth? And for that matter, what is the fifth wave of wealth generation? I say the fourth wave is physics at the molecular level. That means artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and nanotechnology, which I will talk about today. But I'm a physicist. I realize that there's a fifth wave even beyond the fourth wave. The fifth wave toward the end of the century is physics at the atomic level, fusion power, the power of the sun on the earth, seawater. Hydrogen from seawater will be the fuel for our machines. And then quantum computers. We will compute not on silicon. The age of silicon will pass. We will compute on atoms, quantum computers. And then the internet, we will no longer use digital. We will use thoughts, feelings, emotions. BrainNet is going to change everything. And what is the fuel? The fuel for the future. You know, when I was a kid, we realized that if you had gold, silver, oil, you were rich. But if you didn't have oil, you didn't have gold, you didn't have silver, you were just poor. Nope, things have changed. In the future, the oil of the future is data. If you have data and technology, you will be rich in the future. And when I was a child learning history, we learned about the sick men of Asia. China, India had so many people. Each person was a negative. Each person had to be fed, clothed from scratch, a drain on society, the sick men of Asia. Well, what happened? What happened is if you take one of these poor peasants and educate them, give them an opportunity, give them a vision, allow them to start a company, all of a sudden a negative becomes a huge positive. And that's the engine driving huge sectors of the world today. New opportunities, entrepreneurial spirit, new corporations. But you may say, wait a minute. What about the virus? Hasn't the virus derailed all of this? Aren't we being thrown back into the past? No. Artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence will eventually conquer the coronavirus. That's right, artificial intelligence. And how's that? First of all, for example, in the United States and in Europe, thousands of thermometers are being sold very cheaply that connect to the internet. You take your temperature, and immediately it's registered instantaneously. And if you have a map of the world, you can see hotspots. Hotspots where temperatures are peaking instantly. In other words, in real time, you know immediately where the outbreaks will happen of the coronavirus by looking at the map and seeing where temperatures are spiking instantly at the speed of light. And of course, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, your hospitals are flooded with dying patients. And contact tracing. How do you trace people who are spreading the virus? Through the internet. Facebook allows you to create a three-dimensional map of people's friends. And also Google. When people start to make strange requests on Google, artificial intelligence can detect these anomalous searches. If all of a sudden people start to go on Google and say, I can't breathe, maybe I have the virus, immediately artificial intelligence will pick up anomalous, strange searches and tell you where they're coming from. So in other words, artificial intelligence allows you to track the network of where the virus is spreading. And how do you monitor populations? That sounds impossible, right? Nope. Cell phone towers. Cell phone towers track where you are in 3 dimensions on the planet Earth. So with cell phone towers, you know where people are migrating. You know if they are obeying a lockdown. In New York City, where I live, for example, at the outbreak of the virus, immediately cell phone activity showed that people were leaving New York and going to Long Island and other places. You could see people were moving immediately in the rich areas. Poor areas, not so much. But in the rich areas, people were leaving New York City, and you could see that. Plus, in sports games, soccer games, in football, we'll be able to take temperatures by drones. Instantly, thousands of drones will be able to detect the virus by looking at hotspots in temperature. But what about contact tracing between countries? That sounds like it's impossible. Nope. Artificial intelligence is currently monitoring airplane activity. And this is airplane activity at the beginning of the epidemic. Look at this chart. Purple is centered on Wuhan, China. These are the plane routes leaving Wuhan, China. And we can trace the migration of the virus using artificial intelligence. It went from Wuhan, China to mainly Italy. Italy was the focal point because from Italy it went to JFK Airport. In fact, we now know, looking at these charts, that 60% of all virus cases in America took place through JFK Airport, as shown here. And at airports, believe it or not, dogs are already sniffing out the coronavirus in 10 seconds, not in 2 days, 10 seconds. These dogs with 96% accuracy can smell the virus. Now, artificial intelligence will eventually duplicate that. So at the airports of the future, artificial intelligence sensors like these dogs will be able to sniff out the coronavirus, hopefully in 10 seconds with 96% accuracy. So sensors, artificially intelligent sensors will be scattered throughout the environment, in our homes, in parking areas, in amusement parks. Sensors, for example, these are sewage plants. Because people get diarrhea when they have the virus, immediately, by looking at sensors in sewage plants, you can see where the virus is spreading. Now, why is that important? Because another epidemic is inevitable. Because we already know that 60% of all diseases, 60% of all diseases come from animals. So in the future, artificial intelligence will be everywhere and nowhere, invisible, hidden in our bathrooms, clothing, in our bodies, hidden in the environment. Artificial intelligence will be everywhere and nowhere. For example, doctors already in the operating room are connected to the internet as they operate. And machines can scan thousands of MRI scans to detect cancer, early onset Alzheimer's disease, better, faster than any human. I repeat, machines, artificially intelligent machines, can now scan thousands of photographs to detect cancer, diseases, early onset Alzheimer's disease, better than any doctor. This will not replace doctors, but it'll give doctors one more handle to control diseases. So in the future, we will live in cyberspace. In fact, the virus only accelerated the trend toward a cyber world. It's inevitable, but the virus accelerated it. For example, I teach physics in New York City, but I teach it online. My courses are 100% online, and I communicate with my students online. So in the future, we will live in cyberspace. If you are a doctor, you'll walk right through a DNA molecule. If you're a designer, you'll wave your hands and design things and have it printed out on a 3D printer. In fact, we can now extract images from the living brain, and then from that, one day, perhaps create a 3D printer's image. In other words, this could be the future of art. We are good enough now that we can extract images from the living brain. I'll show you how to do this in another slide, but we can already extract images from the living brain, and artists will love this. Artists will be able to think of something and have it printed out on a 3D printer. Already 3D printers can print out metals like jewelry. Perhaps you'll be able to print out your own designer wedding ring. And on the spot, shoes can be printed at a shoe store as you wait. Custom designed shoes as you wait at a shoe store. And machine parts, all of these things can be done by 3D printers. And this is how we will celebrate Christmas in the future. Instead of going to the store to buy a toy, you'll simply imagine it or download the blueprint of the toy and print it in your living room. And how will you communicate on the internet? In the future, you will blink and you will be online. The internet will be in your contact lens. And your contact lens will also recognize people's faces. If you are talking to somebody, an image will appear of their biography, where they are born, where they come from, their education level, do they have a police record, all of that right there in your contact lens. So you will always know who you are talking to in the future. And if they speak to you in Chinese, no problem. The internet will translate Chinese into any language you want. So in the future, you will always know what you are looking at, who you are talking to, and what they are saying. And this is the cell phone of the future. Today, you have a PC, you have a desktop, a laptop, a tablet, and a cell phone. Why? Why? It's the same processor. You do it because you have different screen sizes. But in the future, screen size will be digitized. Plastic computers of any size. From your cell phone, you'll scroll out a bigger screen as you want, type on it, fold it up, and put it back into your cell phone. In fact, we can make yards of this stuff. This is the future of wallpaper. In the future, if you want information, you'll go to the wall and say, mirror, mirror on the wall, change color. I want to see sports. I want to see the news right there in your wallpaper. In other words, in the future, paper will become intelligent. And let's say it's 4 o'clock in the morning. There's a pain in your chest. Is it a heart attack? Do you wake up everybody? Do you call the ambulance? Or is it the pizza you had last night? In the future, you'll go to the wall and say, mirror, mirror on the wall. I want to talk to RoboDoc. Boom. RoboDoc appears in your wallpaper. Artificially intelligent, speaks ordinary language, accesses sound medical advice. And let's say you're driving throughout Europe at 4 o'clock in the morning in a strange country, and you're in a car accident. Uh-oh, you don't speak the language. You don't know where you're located. You don't know what the laws are in that country. What do? You talk to your wristwatch. Your wristwatch has RoboLawyer. RoboLawyer that accesses the legal information in any country, knows the laws, the language. And let's say you're driving your car on a lonely road and you have a heart attack. What happens today? Today, chances are you die. Sorry about that. In the future, your clothes will alert an ambulance, upload your medical history as you are dying, locate your position with GPS, and guide the ambulance to where you are. In the future, it will be impossible to die alone. And your car, of course, will be intelligent. And you'll talk to your car, and your car will talk back to you. In fact, your car will become a robot. In fact, I think the robotics industry will be bigger than the automobile industry. The automobile industry will become part of the robotics industry because your car will be a robot. Let's say you want to have parking. No problem. You talk to your car and say, car, park yourself. The car scans the city looking for parking slots and parks itself. When you want the car, you talk to your wristwatch and say, car, pick me up. In fact, you may not even need a car in the future. You simply talk to your wristwatch, order a car when you need it. You don't have to pay for the car when you don't need it. And in the future, we will go into the sky at supersonic velocities. The supersonic jet is coming already in England, the United States. Prototypes are being tested for supersonic jets. Now, the Concorde was supersonic, but it was a failure. Why? Because people did not like the sonic boom. People did not like their windows to be shattered every time the airplane went overhead. So it was, unfortunately, a failure. Why? Because back in 1970 or so, they didn't have supercomputers to model sonic booms. Today we do. We have supercomputers that can tell you how to minimize the sonic boom or even eliminate it. So imagine in the future going from New York to Tokyo, maybe in just 3 hours. You get in the airplane and you leave, and there you are in Tokyo. And if you're even more adventurous, you will go into outer space. For $200,000, you can go 70 miles up at the edge of the atmosphere into the boundaries of outer space. Believe it or not, tickets are now being sold to go to the moon. Who would have thought that a commercial company, SpaceX, would be offering tickets to go to the moon for passengers? This is incredible. And I think that our grandchildren will have the option of honeymooning on the moon. Wouldn't it be great to honeymoon on the moon, maybe honeymoon on Mars? Now let's talk about the biggest revolution of them all, the revolution of our own bodies, the digitization of medicine. You realize that with the Human Genome Project, we can now trace the evolution of the coronavirus. We have a family tree of the coronavirus. We know how it mutates. We know how it spreads because of biotechnology. And this is going to affect medicine. Now, we all know what middle-aged men fear the most. Middle-aged men fear the C word, colonoscopy. That's when they take a tube and they stick the tube up your rear. Well, in the future, you will simply swallow a pill. The pill has a camera inside, and a camera with a computer and a magnet. With the magnet, you can guide the pill as it goes down your stomach into your intestines. Beautiful pictures will then be sent to a computer. So this gives new meaning for the expression Intel inside. Yes, Intel will also be inside. And what about cancer? Well, today you have to have a biopsy. If you are a woman and you feel a lump in your breast and the biopsy says you have cancer, then in some sense, it's too late. It's too late to save your breast. You were on the operating table immediately. No ifs, ands, or buts. You are on the operating table. That's today. You have 10 billion cancer cells growing in your breast. In the future, you'll take a blood test or a simple urine test to detect cancer enzymes, cancer genes, cancer proteins, maybe 10 years before a tumor forms, when you only have 100, not 10 billion, 100 cancer cells growing in your body. So, ladies and gentlemen, this could be the cure for cancer. Your toilet, your bathroom will have more sensors than a modern university hospital today. Every day, checking to see if you have cancer genes, cancer cells growing in your body. So the word tumor will disappear from the English language. We will no longer say the word tumor. And let's say organs begin to fail. Then what are you going to do? We will grow new ones. Because of the biotech revolution, we can now grow simple organs. This is an ear. It is made out of plastic. You seed it with cells from your ear and they grow and you get a new ear with no rejection mechanism. I repeat, no rejection, because these are cells from your own body. We can also grow bladders. We can now grow skin, blood vessels, heart valves, bladders, windpipes. The next organ to be grown is the liver. We haven't done it yet, but that's the next organ to be grown. So for all you alcoholics in the audience, take heart. We will grow new livers as your liver wears out if you drink too much. And then the next big organ to be digitized is the human brain. This has enormous consequences. First of all, when we digitize ourselves, our memories, our feelings, our sensations, in some sense, we live forever. This is called digital immortality. Already in Silicon Valley, there's a company offering to digitize everything known about your digital signature, your cell phone data, your credit card transactions, your Instagram photographs, everything digitized. You will live in some sense forever on the internet. And you'll be able to talk to your great, 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 great grandkids, and they'll talk to their great, 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 great grandfather and grandmother because they will live forever on the internet. We will digitize historical figures. I would love to talk to Einstein. I would love to sit down to talk to a digitized Einstein that understands letters, writings, theories, everything known about him digitized. One day you may be digitized as well and live forever. Well, that's the future. Let's talk about today. Today, we've now recorded simple memories in animals, in mice and monkeys. We've recorded memories, and eventually we will record the memories of Alzheimer's patients to create a memory chip. You push a button and memories come flooding into your mind. On the left, you see the hippocampus in red. That's where memories are processed. And we can now record memories and put them on the internet. Eventually, maybe in the far future, emotions, feelings, and memories will be put on the internet, making possible BrainNet. Now, today, teenagers, when they make a sentence, they put a happy face at the end of every sentence. In the future, teenagers will put the memory of their first date, the memory of their first kiss, the memory of their graduation right there on the internet. So in other words, the internet will become BrainNet. This means that we will think, and be able to communicate across continents, communicate across the world. Now, think of television and the movies. It's just a flat screen with sound. That's all it is. A multi-billion-dollar industry based on a screen with sound. In the future, we will have emotions, feelings, memories as well. And this will help to reduce human boundaries. When people talk about suffering, you wonder, is it fake? Is it real? In the future, you'll feel what other people are feeling, and hopefully that'll bring us closer together. Now what I'd like to do is summarize some of the things that I've been talking about, and then take questions and comments from the audience. Let's summarize. Let's summarize what I've been talking about. I've been talking about a match that Moldova is ready to take off. It has all the ingredients of success: nice climate, fertile soil, growing industries, a young population that wants to be part of the future, eager to start new companies, but it needs a spark. And so what are some of the ingredients that could launch this rocket into space? Well, as I said, lower taxes. Now, governments, of course, they love to tax. But see, taxes regulate science. They don't create science at all. No new science comes from the government, unless, of course, you have a crash program like the space program or the atomic bomb. But day to day, governments get in the way. Governments have too many regulations, too high taxes. So we have to encourage entrepreneurs. We have to have grants. We have to encourage them. Governments should reduce unnecessary regulations. Governments regulate, that's what they do. But too much regulation can choke the goose that lays the golden egg. Youth have to be trained to have role models. Youth have to be trained at the university to realize that jobs are open in the IT sector. Jobs are open for young people interested in artificial intelligence, telecommunications, the internet. That's where the jobs, a lot of the jobs, not all of the jobs, but many of the jobs of the future will be. Schools. Schools have to stress science and technology, things that are innovative, including art. As I said before, even art will be digitized. So schools have to stress things that have an impact on society, like science and technology, things that innovate, things that are creative, and scholarships. Scholarships should encourage the best and the brightest. Now, in the last minute, I'd like to then tell a short story, and then we'll open it up to the audience. When I was a child, my role model was Albert Einstein. And let me tell you my favorite Einstein story. When Einstein was an old man, he was tired of giving the same talk over and over again. So one day a chauffeur came up to him, and the chauffeur said, "Professor, I'm really a part-time actor. I've heard your speech so many times, I've memorized it. So why don't we switch places? Switch places. I will put on a mustache, I will put on a wig, I will be the great Einstein, and you can take a rest and be my chauffeur." Well, Einstein loved the joke, so they switched places. This went along famously until one day, a mathematician in the back asked a very difficult question. And Einstein thought, oh, the game is up. But then the chauffeur said, "That question is so elementary that even my chauffeur here can answer it." Well, thank you very much. I'd like to now start with the question and answer phase.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor, so much. And, I was thinking that actually I'm lucky to have a dog at home. Maybe I need to take him to the office to sniff for coronavirus in order to identify instead of measuring the temperature of my stuff. So before moving to Q&A, actually, I'd like to take the opportunity and on behalf of my country to express that we are very grateful that you accepted to promote our event at a global scale. I mentioned many comments on your social media accounts that many people was appreciating the fact that the greatest scientist of the world today took in a way the patronage over a developing country as Moldova is. So increasing in this way and contributing to the worldwide awareness. Thank you so much. And now the promised questions. So you have mentioned in a couple of your interviews about the post-pandemic world. How would you define it? What should we expect from this world?
Well, the coronavirus has accelerated the trend toward a digitized virtual society. So the coronavirus has not stopped the march of progress. It's actually accelerated the march of progress. And in the post-pandemic world, we will have sensors, invisible, tiny sensors scattered throughout the environment, because 60% of all diseases come from animals. 60% of all diseases. The coronavirus, we think, came from the horseshoe bat, for example. And this means that another outbreak is inevitable. But the next time, we will be prepared. In 1918, we had the Spanish flu virus. We were totally unprepared. We had no technology, no medicine of any worth. We were helpless against the 1918 flu virus, which killed more people than World War I. In the next pandemic, we will be on guard. In the post-pandemic world, invisible sensors at airports, restaurants, in our bodies, in our homes, will detect the presence of these viruses and alert us. And then with artificial intelligence, we will be able to track its progress and stop it, so that no more viruses will catch us off guard.
Okay, but after the post-pandemic, so in the post-pandemic world, what would be the most recommended and safe areas for investment, according to your opinion?
Well, let's talk about investments. Right now, we know that investments in technologies that involve person-to-person contact are failing. Bankruptcies are erupting. The tourist industry has been devastated. The real estate market, restaurants, theaters, entertainment, things that involve human-to-human contact are being destroyed. However, Amazon and online services are thriving because people are making the transition to an online economy. So in the short term, we're going to find a mini deflation, a deflation taking place because of the lack of economic activity. But governments now are printing so much money. Governments are printing so much money now that after the epidemic is over, we're going to have inflation, because we have to pay back all the bonds, pay back all the debts. And so at that point, there's going to be a flip. Real estate could actually be even more valuable, even though real estate prices now are being depressed, because real estate involves solid things. Now, some people ask me about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. I think that would be a bad investment for the future, because it goes up and down on the basis of whims, fancy. Who knows what governs people's speculative drive? So I think Bitcoin would be a very bad investment to make. But telecommunications, IT, and in the future, entertainment, tourism, they're going to come back in a big way. But watch out for inflation, because of the fact that governments are printing barrelfuls of money at the present time.
So you just made desolated many people that was believing in cryptocurrency. But according to your opinion, for developing countries, what would be the key priorities the government and the industry should promote?
I think the key is a government that is a public and private cooperation. Governments and industry have to work together rather than fight each other. What do governments do best? Governments regulate, and they regulate through taxes and laws. But there could be too many taxes and too many laws that destroy the companies. Companies need an environment that encourages investment, encourages people to start new companies. Let me give you an example. In the United States, I started a new company on my cell phone. That's right. I got my cell phone out, punched a few things, and I started a company. That's how easy it is if you remove regulations that are unnecessary. Because bureaucrats love to create new regulations. That's what they do. Now, of course, regulations are important, but too many regulations can destroy the entrepreneurial spirit. And that's the key. We have to create a culture which sees entrepreneurial spirit as one of the matches, flames, that will set off this booster rocket. So we have to think about reducing regulation, creating role models, making universities research centers for new industries, and have the government help to finance some of this activity with lower taxes, grants. And I think the public-private cooperation is going to be key to the future.
Thank you, Professor. Actually, it's everything you have mentioned in your last slide of the presentation, and this is to remind everyone, for all registered participants, that the presentation will be available for them, for each and everyone who registered and is participating in our event platform. Professor, I have couple of more questions that we get from Facebook followers who are engaged in this conversation before this event. So, first question is from Nicoleta Rusu, that wants to know, what is the future of agriculture-oriented countries? Can't they be competitive?
Well, we have to realize that in the short term, agriculture can be a commodity that help us to leap into the future because it generates income and investment. But in the long term, we do have to realize that because agriculture is becoming more efficient, that commodity prices are dropping in the agricultural sector in the long term. So the key is to use commodity capital as a foundation in order to leverage intellectual capital. In other words, you have to have both. You have to have a commodity capital and you have to have intellectual capital. But what you want to do is use commodity capital like gold and silver and minerals and oil and agriculture as a way to leverage into the economies of the future, which are going to be much more intellectual, that is, innovative, industries that require imagination, science, technology, planning, innovation. So we have to use commodity capital to help leverage intellectual capital. For example, Tony Blair of England, former prime minister, likes to say that England derives more revenue from rock and roll than the coal mining industry. Coal mining is a commodity. It can be mass produced, better containerization, better technologies, better shipping, more competition, and prices are stagnant or falling. However, rock and roll is an export that generates tremendous amounts of money because it is innovative, it is creative, it is a product of the mind. So in summary, you have to have both.
Yeah.
You have to have a commodity sector and you have to have an intellectual sector. But the key is to use the commodity sector as a leverage to be able to leap into intellectual capital, because that's where the future is. The future is not necessarily going to be oil, it's going to be data. Data will be the oil of the future.
So innovations will help the agricultural countries also to be more profitable. Next question is from Beatrice Popovsky. Given the advanced ICT infrastructure of Moldova, can this country become the next Silicon Valley?
You know, I grew up in Silicon Valley. I was born in the Bay Area, and I saw the transformation take place. And I realized that it's no mystery. It's no mystery how you create a new Silicon Valley. The laws are known, but so few countries pursue that direction. And Moldova, I think, has an opportunity. You see, when I was a child, that area around Stanford University was all fields, alfalfa, orange. It was basically agricultural, kind of poor, a lot of migrant labor. That's the world that I grew up in. But then Stanford University realized that land was cheap and they could charge $1 a year rent to bring companies in. So all of a sudden, young companies started to come in. They took advantage of the graduate students at Stanford who provided the foot soldiers for the new IT revolution. The governments encouraged it. Taxes were extremely low, in fact, almost zero. And all of a sudden, it had scientists coming in and entrepreneurial capital. Capitalists started to come in and they started to realize you can make money. You can make money on these things. And so we have the combination of nice property, cheap rent, money coming in from the outside, graduate students working almost for free, giving you high tech, and young people that understood the market, that young people were thirsty for the devices coming out of Silicon Valley. Now, so the lesson of Silicon Valley is rather simple, but very few countries have all these ingredients: low taxation, cheap land, lots of graduate students, the incoming of entrepreneurial capital, a climate that encourages innovation. These are all the secrets, and Moldova has many of them. So I think that yes, Silicon Valleys can be created around the world, but very few countries pull it off because you have to have all these ingredients in place. And Moldova has many of them.
So thank you for this encouraging message from your side. And innovation is kind of keyword of the whole discussion here together. And one more question, again about innovation. It came from Vlad Genchu. Innovation is the name of the game in our days, but at the same time, it became kind of buzzword caused by too much information. How much we should focus on developing innovation within our organizations?
We have to encourage innovation without being paralyzed by too many facts and figures. In other words, from all this data, we have to extract meaningful lessons. And that's the key. You see, data is like crude oil. Crude oil is not usable. You cannot burn crude oil. Crude oil has to be refined in refineries. Same thing with data. Data is like crude oil. From that, you have to extract lessons. And rather than being drowning in data, you have to extract the lessons that will make your company or your nation thrive and leap into the future. Now, parents ask a different question to me. They say their children have too much data. They spend all their time on the internet. What do you tell young people? And I tell mothers that, first of all, children have to be socialized. They have to learn the lessons of human behavior. Data is not enough. The rough and tumble, give and take of forming friendships, socialization, that's the first criterion. But once they are socialized, once they're part of a group, then it's good. It's good to have them connected. Otherwise, they can't talk to their friends. They don't know what their friends are talking about. You want your children to be integrated. So the lesson here is that you want children to learn the lessons of socialization, so that they can absorb all the data that is coming their way. And the same thing for companies. Companies are flooded with data. They know that they're sitting on a gold mine, but to extract the gold, that is to refine the oil, that's where the human mind comes in.
And you are talking several times within your presentation about the robots. And we have a question connected to it from Elena Vivat. Robots are becoming more common and more advanced. Shall we be afraid that robots will fully replace people?
The short answer is no. Robots, of course, can enrich the economy, create new jobs, create new industries. But how smart is a robot? If you take our most advanced military robot and compare it to an animal, what animal would it be? It would be a cockroach, a bug, an insect. If you take our most advanced robot and put it in the forest, along with a cockroach, the cockroach can immediately find food, mates, shelter, run around the forest. Our most advanced military robot in a forest will fall over, be useless, get lost. But eventually, our robots will become as smart as a mouse, eventually as smart as a rat, then as smart as a rabbit, then as smart as a dog or a cat, and finally, maybe by the end of the century, I don't know for sure, but maybe by the end of the century, our robots will be as smart as a monkey. At that point, they are potentially dangerous. Monkeys are self-aware. They know they're not human. They have their own agenda. They have their own goals. Now, dogs are confused. You see, dogs think that we are a dog, that we're the top dog, they're the underdog, and they obey us. Dogs are not self-aware that they are separate from humanity, but monkeys are. So when our robots become as smart as a monkey, they are self-aware, they create their own agenda, and at that point, I think we should put a chip in their brain to shut them off when they have murderous thoughts. But that's still in the future. We have many decades before we have to worry about self-aware robots, because robots today do not know they're robots. They're so stupid, they don't even know what they are.
Yeah, but they are becoming more advanced and advanced, so this is why they start people to be worried about it, because no one wants to lose the jobs together with new robots and technologization and digitalization and everything.
Right, but you see, every time a new technology comes, there are winners and losers. When the blacksmiths were obsolete because of the coming of the car, horses became obsolete and everyone wanted cars, but that created automobile workers. So new jobs opened up, old jobs were destroyed, and we don't cry about it. We don't cry about the fact there are no more blacksmiths in our villages anymore because they became automobile workers. So we have to make sure that new industries open up, and the robotics industry, I think, will be bigger than the automobile industry of today. To service, maintain, design, repair robots will be bigger than the automobile industry of today because your automobile will become a robot. The car industry will be a subset of the robotics industry because your car will become a robot. So new jobs, new opportunities are going to open up, but you have to retrain workers to be part of this revolution. We had to retrain blacksmiths so they could make automobiles. We had to retrain them. We have to do the same thing with workers today. If they are laid off, we have to retrain them to be part of the digital age.
So as we have a saying, so when something disappearing, some new things are appearing to replace it. So it's always restrictions and opportunity, and the whole discussion actually of today in our event and the general discourse of today, it's about the impact that the pandemics has brought to the world, and mainly we are talking about the negative impact, but everything has a reverse side of it, and my last question to you will be exactly on the positive sides of the pandemic. If to identify three things, what would be this?
Well, realize that the pandemic is not all bad. The pandemic has accelerated our trend toward digitization. It's accelerated our trend toward a virtual economy. And these are good things. Good things because it speeds up the natural progress of technology. Not to mention the fact that it has given a tremendous boost to medicine and biotechnology. We created a vaccine within a matter of months. Usually it takes years to do this, and these viruses are everywhere. As I said, 60% of all diseases come from animals. We live with animals. We cherish our animals. We live with them. So it's inevitable that another pandemic will jump out, and biotechnology has leaped forward as a consequence of this. And the whole idea of artificial intelligence spreading into the environment, that's not so great, that's not so alarming an idea anymore, because we want artificial intelligence everywhere now to be guardians of our lives, to detect a virus as it emerges. And so people at first were a little bit wary of artificial intelligence being everywhere, but now we want artificial intelligence to be everywhere, to be our guards, to protect us against the next pandemic.
Thank you, Professor, for such an engaging conversation that I truly believe it will build a ground for many new reflections, and why not maybe for new investment ideas out of this event that will be for the use not only for the entrepreneurs of my country, but also for the other people that are watching us today. Thank you so much. Thank you for spending your time with us. We wish you to be in great health, and we are going to follow you in achieving your greatest goals of the life. Thank you.
Thank you. Real pleasure and honor.
Dear audience, we have finalized the plenary session part of today. We have learned, discovered the advantages of the Republic of Moldova in terms of investment attraction. We have witnessed a success story from a billionaire today, and we have explored the new trends, upcoming trends for the economic future that is ahead of us. Now, it's exactly the time when we can put on the table the concrete investment projects. We are going to start the pitching sessions, during which Moldovan companies, representatives of state authorities and private sectors are going to present their investment and partnership offers in front of you. I want just to mention that only the registered participants will be able to watch us, to follow us, and to be engaged in the conversation, sending questions throughout our event platform. And are encouraging the ones who are watching us on the Facebook, LinkedIn, other media platforms to still have the time to register to our event. You can visit the moldovabusinessweek.md site. You can register yourself and be part also of the platform, watching and participating in the pitching session. So stay with us in order to learn about big and main investment projects of the infrastructure of the country.